Okay, picture this. It's March 2026, and the latest war isn't being defined by who has the most advanced fighter jet, but by something way more fundamental, a totally lopsided economic problem.
So here's the math that's just, well, breaking modern militaries. On one side, you have an attacker who sends a drone that costs maybe $40,000. But to shoot it down, the defender has to fire a missile that's worth $3 million. Think about that. For every single dollar the attacker spends, the defender is forced to burn 75. There's just no way. You can't win a war with that kind of balance sheet. And this leads us to really the central question of our time. If it costs you exponentially more to defend yourself than it costs someone to attack you, how do you even begin to think about a winning strategy? I mean, the old ways of thinking about military power, they're becoming totally obsolete.
And look, this isn't some far-off hypothetical problem. It's a reality that's been unfolding for years now. While this crisis in the Gulf might be what's grabbing headlines in our 2026 scenario, the exact same nightmare has been a daily reality in Ukraine ever since the drone war really kicked off back in 2022. Just to give you a sense of the sheer scale we're talking about, get this. By early 2026, Russia had launched over 54,000 of those Iranian-designed Shahed-type drones at Ukraine. This isn't just tactical warfare anymore. It's a war of industrial attrition, fought with cheap, relentless, and just mass-produced machines. And here's the painful irony, right? Despite watching this whole new kind of war unfold in real time for 4 years, major world powers are still scrambling to figure out what to do. This quote from a defense official, man, it just reveals a stunning lag in actually learning the lesson and doing something about it. But there was one nation that kind of saw this coming, and they decided to stress test their own solutions in a very real way. India basically turned a real-world combat scenario, which they codenamed Operation Sindoor, into a live laboratory to build its own unique playbook. So here's what happened. In May of 2025, India launched these precision strikes on some terrorist sites. The whole thing was fast. But the really crucial part was when the other side responded with their own drone swarm, India's countermeasures actually worked. But that's not even the most important point. The real story is what happened next. Just 2 months later, the government pumped $234 million directly into its own domestic drone industry. They saw the future, and they put their money where their mouth was, immediately. And we're not talking about off-the-shelf foreign gear here. No, India deployed its own homegrown drones. Stuff like the Nangastra 1, which is a loitering munition. That means it can basically hang out over a target before it strikes. Or the ALS-50, a super versatile drone that can take off and land vertically. You know, a lot of these systems were so new they hadn't even been formally brought into the military yet. Operation Sindoor was basically a combat mission and a final exam, all rolled into one. So you gotta be asking, how did India develop these advanced systems so fast? Well, it definitely wasn't an accident. It was the result of a really deliberate strategy, a unique playbook that does something pretty smart. It connects the speed and agility of startups directly with the needs of the military. And that playbook is called the IDEX model, Innovations for Defense Excellence. It's a totally radical simplification of how militaries usually buy stuff. I mean, instead of a process that takes a decade, here's how it works. The military says, hey, we have this problem. They turn that problem into a challenge for startups. Then they fund the best ideas to build prototypes. And the winners, they get fast-tracked straight into real-world combat testing. It's that simple. And then, to pour some rocket fuel on that fire, you've got the ADDIT scheme. Think of it as a high-octane accelerator. It gives out pretty big grants, but specifically to startups that are working on the next generation of deep tech. So this isn't about funding what we need today. It's a bet on the future. We're talking about stuff like advanced AI, quantum navigation, and truly autonomous systems. So, did this approach work? Well, the impact has been nothing short of explosive. The success of Operation Sindoor was like a catalyst, sparking this massive flood of investment. Get this, of all the venture capital money that went into Indian defense startups over the last decade, a jaw-dropping 87% of it came in that 1 year, 2025 alone. Just incredible. And this quote right here, combat tested is the new Series A, it just perfectly captures the new mindset. You know, for investors in this super high-stakes world of defense tech, a slick PowerPoint deck just doesn't cut it anymore. The ultimate proof, the thing that gets them to write the big checks, is seeing your tech actually perform in a real conflict. But okay, India's journey is far from over. Operation Sindoor was a huge breakthrough, for sure. But now, for the next chapter, the country really has to absorb the incredibly hard-won lessons from Ukraine's brutal 4-year drone war if it wants to be truly ready for what's coming next. And really, Ukraine's experience provides a super clear roadmap with 4 key lessons. First up, scale. Scale is everything. India needs to stop thinking in the hundreds of drones and start thinking in the millions. Second, electronic warfare. Jamming is a constant, so you have to build systems that work when GPS is totally gone. Third, interceptors. Those cheap drones you use to shoot down other drones, you gotta treat them like bullets and just mass produce them. And finally, the next big step is developing mothership drones that can carry smaller swarms and extend their reach. Okay, so if we zoom out for a second, what India is doing here is more than just a national strategy. It really represents a fundamental new way of thinking about how a nation can, and frankly must, build its military muscle in the 21st century. Because here's the fundamental truth of modern conflict. An adversary can dream up, test, and deploy a new weapon in a cycle that takes months, not years. Meanwhile, traditional military procurement, which can take over a decade to get a new system onto the battlefield, well, it's just way too slow. It can't keep up with that speed of adaptation. And that's why this IDEX model is so important. By tapping into a competitive, fast-moving, and innovative startup scene, India has essentially created a potential blueprint. You could even call it a doctrine for how other democratic, free-market countries can learn to innovate at the speed of war. So in the end, it all boils down to this one simple question. The future of security isn't going to be decided by who has the biggest budget. It's going to be decided by who can win the race from the lab to the battlefield, who can get the best tech out of a workshop and into the hands of soldiers the fastest. That is the race that will define our century.